Good morning everyone. Good morning sir. In today's video, I will report about the topic of the continuation of the case of John Dillinger. So, we all know that John Dillinger, in the first report, that John Dillinger is or was an American gangster of the Great Depression, and he led the group known as the Dillinger Gang, which was accused of robbing 24 banks and 4 police stations. Dillinger was imprisoned several times but escaped twice. So, this is the continuation of the case of John Dillinger. So, meanwhile, Dillinger and his gang pulled several banks robberies. They also plundered the police arsenals as Auburn, Indiana, and Peru, Indians stealing several machine guns, rifles, and revolvers, a quantity of ammunition, and several bulletproof vests. And on December 14, John Hamilton, a Dillinger gang member, shot and killed a police detective in Chicago. A month later, the Dillinger gang killed a police officer during the robbery of the First National Bank of East Chicago, Indiana. Then they made their way to Florida and subsequently to Tucson, Arizona. So in the first slide, ito po yung continuation ng story about the case of John Dillinger. So samantala hinatak ni Dillinger ang kanyang barkada ang ilang pagnanakaw sa bangko. So they also plundered o looban ang mga arsenal ng pulisya sa Auburn, Indiana, Peru, Indians, at pagnanakaw ng mga machine guns, rifles, and revolvers, at ilang mga bala or the number of ammunition, at ilan ding bulletproof vests. So on December 14, binaril at pinatay ni John Hamilton. It is one of the member of Dillinger's gang, ang isang police detective sa Chicago. So makalipas ang ilang buwan, pinatay ng gang ni Dillinger ang isang pulis sa panahon ng pagnanakaw. Doon na naman sa First National Bank of East in Chicago, Indiana. At nagpunta sa Florida at pagkatapos naman ay sa Tucson, Arizona. So, hindi lamang isang lugar yung ninanakawan ng gang ni John Dillinger, kundi palipat-lipat din sila ng lugar para hindi sila makita or hindi sila maaresto agad. So, next slide is there on January 23, 1934, a fire broke out in the hotel where Clark and Mackley were hiding under assumed names. Firemen recognized the men from their photographs, and local police arrested them as well as Dillinger and Harry Pierpont. They also seized 3 Thompson submachine guns, 2 Winchester rifles mounted as machine guns, 5 bulletproof vests, and more than $25,000 in cash, part of it from the East Chicago robbery. So, in this next slide, so doon na naman sa kanilang pinuntahan noong January 23, 1934, isang sunog po yung sumiklab sa isang hotel kung saan nagtatago dito sina Clark at Mackley. So si Clark and Mackley, sila din yung isa din sila sa membro ng Dillinger's gang. So sa ilalim ng mga pinapalagay na pangalan, yun po yung pinapalagay na pangalan sila, which is Clark and Mackley. So nakilala ng bombero ang mga lalaki mula sa kanilang mga litrato. At dahil doon, inaresto sila ng lokal na pulisya at gayon din si Dillinger at si Harry Pierpont. So, nakuha din nila ang 3 Thompson submachine gun, 2 Winchester rifles, at nakamount bilang machine gun, 5 bulletproof vests, at higit sa $25,000 na cash na bahagi nito mula sa East Chicago robbery. So, napakalaking halaga po yung nakuha nilang pera dun po sa East Chicago kung saan dun din sila yung nanakaw. So, in the next slide, so Dillinger was sequestered at the county jail in Crown Point, Indiana, to await trial for the murder of East Chicago police officers. Authorities boasted that the jail was escape-proof, but on March 3, 1934, Dillinger cowed the guards with the claim later was wooden gun he had whittled. He forced them to open the door to his cell, then grabbed 2 machine guns, locked up the guards and several trusties, and fled. So it was then that Dillinger made the mistake that would cost him his life. He stole the sheriff's car and drove across the Indiana, Illinois line, heading for Chicago. By doing that, he violated the National Motor Vehicle Thief Act, which made it federal offense to transport a stolen motor vehicle across a state line. So, si Dillinger naman ay inilayo o na-isolate sa kulungan ng bansa sa Crown Point. So, Crown Point, Indiana. So, upang hintayin ang paglilitis sa kanya para sa pagpatay sa opisyal ng pulisya ng East Chicago. So, ipinagmamalaki ng mga otoridad na ang kulungan daw ni John Dillinger ay isang escape proof. Ibig sabihin, hindi madaling makakatakas dito si John Dillinger at hindi din siya madaling makakahanap ng way na makatakas dito sa kulungan niya. But on March 3, 1934, kinakot ni Dillinger ang mga guards o mga gwardiya using his wooden gun na kanyang inukit or kanyang kinarve. So, sa ginawa ng yon ay nakalabas siya ng kulungan. Kinuha niya yung 2 machine guns at ikinulong din doon yung mga guards at civil justice at nag-escape. So, noon ay nagkamali si John Dillinger na maaaring ipahamak ng kanyang buhay dahil sa kanyang pagtakas. Ninakaw lang naman niya ang kotse na siyang sheriff at nagmaneho patungo na naman sa Indiana, Illinois at papuntang Chicago. So by doing that, nakalabag na naman siya sa batas, which is the National Vehicle Thief Act, which made it federal offense na pagkakasala ang pagdala ng ninakaw na sasakyan di motor sa isang linya ng estado. So next, a federal complaint was sworn charging Dillinger with a thief and interstate transportation of the sheriff's car, which was recovered in Chicago. After the grand jury returned an indictment, the FBI became actively involved in the nationwide search for Dillinger. So, meanwhile, Pierpont, Mackley, and Clark were returned to Ohio and convicted of the murder of the Lima sheriff. Pierpont and Mackley were sentenced to death and Clark to life imprisonment. But in an escape attempt, Mackley was killed and Pierpont is wounded. A month later, Pierpont was recovered sufficiently to be executed. So, a federal complaint o pagrereklamo na isiningil kay Dillinger ang pagnanakaw at interstate transportation of the sheriff's car na recover pa sa Chicago. Matapos ibalik ng grand jury ang isang sakdal, naging aktibong kasangkot ang mga FBI sa paghahanap kay Dillinger sa buong bansa. Hindi lamang sa isang lugar, kundi sa buong bansa. Samantala, sila naman ni Pierpont, Mackley, and Clark ay naibalik sa Ohio na kung saan nahatulan ng pagpatay sa sheriff ng Lema. So, si Pierpont and Mackley was sentenced to death at si Clark naman ay nahatulan sa pagkakakulong habang buhay. Ngunit sa pagtangkang tumakas, si Mackley ay napatay at si Pierpont naman ay nasugatan. Ngunit makalipas lamang ng ilang buwan, sapat lamang na recovered si Pierpont, ngunit siya din ay namatay. On the 6th slide, in Chicago, Dillinger joined his girlfriend Evelyn Frechette. They proceed to St. Paul, where Dillinger teamed up with Homer Van Meter, Lester Babyface Nathan Gillis, Eddie Green, and Tommy Carroll, among others. The gang's business prospered as they continued robbing banks of large amount of money. So, in Chicago, sumama si Dillinger sa kanyang kasintahan na si Evelyn Frechette. So, nagpatuloy naman sila sa St. Paul, saan nakipagtulungan si Dillinger kay Homer Van Meter, kay Lester Babyface Nathan Gillis, Eddie Green, and Tommy Carroll at iba pa. So, umunlad naman yung kanilang negosyo ng kanilang gang o grupo habang patuloy naman nilang ninanakawan ang mga bangko ng malalaking halaga ng pera. Yung malalaking halaga ng pera, maaaring ito yung ginagamit nila for business. So we have here. So then on March 13, 1934, an agent talked to the manager of the Lincoln Court Apartments in St. Paul, who reported two suspicious tenants, Mr. and Mrs. Hellman, who acted nervous and refused to admit the apartment. The next day, an agent and a police officer knocked on the door of the apartment. Evelyn Frechette opened the door but quickly slammed it shut. The agent called for reinforcement to surround the building. So, then on March 30 daw, 1934, so isa pong ahente or agent na kung saan nakipag-usap sa isang manager ng Lynn Court Apartments ng in St. Paul, na kung saan nag-ulat na may dalawang kahina-hinalang nangungupahan kung saan yung tenants dito si Mr. and Mrs. Hellman, na kung saan tumikilos na kinakabahan at tumaging tanggapin ang apartment. So, kinabukasan, isang agent na naman at isang police officer ang kumatok sa pintuan ng apartment. Ngunit sa pagbukas nito, ang nakabukas naman ay si Evelyn Frechette, which is yung girlfriend ni Dillinger. And then, dali-dali niya naman itong isinara. At doon, tumawag yung agent ng reinforcement na paligiran yung building or yung apartment na yon. While waiting, the agents saw a man enter a hall near the Hellman's apartment. When questioned, the man, Homer Van Meter, drew a gun. Shots were exchanged, during which Van Meter fled the building and forced a truck driver at gunpoint to drive him to Green's apartment. Suddenly, the door of the Hellman apartment opened and the muzzle of a machine gun began spraying the hallway with lead. Under cover of the machine gunfire, Dillinger and Evelyn Frechette fled through a back door. They too robbed the Greens' apartment, where Dillinger was treated for a bullet wound received in the escape. So habang naghihintay, nakita ng mga agent ang isang lalaki na pumasok sa isang hall. Na pumasok sa isang hall. So malapit sa apartment na nila Mr. and Mrs. Hellman. Nang tanongin ito, bumunot po siya ng barel na ang lalaking ito ay si Homer Van Meter na kasama ni John Dillinger. Nakipagpalitan ng putok kung saan tumakas si Van Meter sa gusali at pinit ang isang driver ng truck rudder na nakatutok ang barel upang ihatid siya sa apartment ni Green. So biglang bumukas ang pinto ng apartment ng Hellman at ang dulo ng machine gun ay nagsimulang magpaula ng mga bala sa pasilyo. So under cover of the machine gun fire, tumakas si Dillinger at Evelyn Pritchett sa likod ng pinto. They drove through Green's apartment na kung saan si Dillinger ay ginamot dahil sa bala gawa ng pagtakas nito. So that's all for my report. Thank you for listening and keep safe everyone.